Hello, everyone. Tonight we are walking under a punishing desert sun, one that's been bleaching bones and baking footprints for tens of thousands of years. A flat wind stirs the dust in strange patterns, some might call them whispers. You squint, and for a second you're sure you see something blink in the sand. But there's nothing there. Just a smear of shadow, a soft shape with too many edges to be a rock, or not enough. You've entered the domain of a creature that doesn't run, doesn't bark, doesn't even blink unless it absolutely has to. Its greatest talent, doing nothing. So perfectly, so thoroughly that entire generations thought it was gone for good. That's right. This is the tale of a horned lizard that once convinced the world it had gone extinct just for the fun of it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love knowing who's awake with me in the small hours. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle across a crusty stretch of ground that crunches like scorched crackers beneath your boots. The landscape is so dry it crackles audibly, and even the cactus spines look tired. Out here, if you're moving, you're suspicious. That's the rule. You stop, drop to a crouch, and listen. Nothing, but something is watching. The lizard doesn't breathe like you do. It doesn't even blink. Its eyelids are fused like shields, slitted just enough for it to monitor your fidgeting. You're sweating. It is not. It's been sitting in the same patch of shade since sunrise, pretending to be a piece of rock so hard it might have convinced itself. The ancients used to say that the desert gives you visions. This is where hallucination and survival shake hands and trade snacks. You squint at a lump in the sand for so long your eyes start drawing faces into it, faces that smirk. You blink, and it's gone. The lump, not the face. One horned lizard, let's call her the Queen of Stillness, has been playing this game for decades. Longer, really. Her kind emerged during the Miocene, around the time saber-toothed cats were still workshopping their branding. Evolution handed her an outrageous designed stubby body, wicked horns, and a blood-squirting trick straight out of a low-budget vampire flick. But her real masterpiece isn't violence, it's performance. She doesn't chase or hide. She waits, not out of fear, but confidence. If you can convince the world you're already gone, you win. Archaeological layers tell us plenty about movement. Hoof prints, fire pits, migration trails. But the horned lizard, she left no trail. She left gaps. Fossils missing from expected sediment layers. Gaps that confused paleontologists for years. Some chalked it up to erosion. Others whispered about species that just got tired of being noticed. Historians still debate whether Phrynosoma douglasii ever truly vanished, or just staged the most successful long-form disappearing act in vertebrate history, Stillness. You brush away a palm-sized rock near your boot. It resists. It's not a rock. One blink. One little puff of dry breath. Then stillness again. The thing about survival is it's not always loud. The lions roar. The wolves howl. But the ones who last? They don't even show up to the party. Odd fact break. Did you know horned lizards can flatten their bodies to change the shadow they cast? Not just for camouflage, but to mess with depth perception. That's not just smart, that's art. A little desert performance piece called "I'm Not Here, Please Step Around Me." You settle on a boulder, probably a real one this time, and let your eyes trace the horizon. In the distance, a vulture circles. Classic desert cliché, but even that bird with its excellent vision and better attitude has been tricked before. The queen has laid still beneath it more times than you've opened your fridge hoping something new will appear. The sun drops a little lower. The temperature dips 5 degrees, but you're sweating harder now. There's something about being watched by something pretending not to be there, like a really passive-aggressive roommate. You reach for your canteen and freeze. You swear the ground shifted, But the queen is right where she was, or maybe she isn't. Maybe that was a decoy. Maybe she moved an inch and settled in again before your brain could catch up. This whole area, they say, was once submerged in a shallow sea. That was a long time ago when sharks swam where your shadow now falls. But the lizard, her lineage sat through all that. Not in the water, of course, but nearby, watching, waiting, not moving unless it was absolutely necessary. She's seen continents slide past like lazy ships. The stillness is a weapon, not the kind you swing, the kind you become. You stand slowly, dust your knees. There's a horn shape 3 steps to your left now. You're not sure if it's the same lizard or a cousin or a hallucination born of heat and curiosity. You turn your head, just a flick, gone. Was it ever really there? The dirt here doesn't just sit, it naps. You step lightly as if waking it might be rude. Beneath the crusted surface, it's cooler than you'd expect. Like it remembers wetter times when rivers carved ribbons through this land instead of wind. You toe at a shallow dip in the soil. It's not a hole exactly, more like the suggestion of one. But something about it feels used. You crouch again. That's going to be a theme tonight. The burrow is no bigger than a teacup saucer, but it hums with the quiet gravity of things that lived through too much. At the edges, there are faint scratches, not like a dog digging for joy. These are deliberate circular, more smoothing than clawing, made by something that knew how to vanish without leaving a mess. Inside, nothing. Or so it seems. A grain of sand moves, or maybe your mind twitches. You stare until your knees ache. The desert air presses in close like an old friend who doesn't respect boundaries. Still nothing. It's possible you're watching a shadow of a memory. Or maybe just a heat mirage shaped like a hole. Either way, you're starting to understand the lizard's mindset. Stillness isn't just a trick, it's a decision. In ancient Mesopotamia, where gods were assigned to irrigation ditches and even silence had a name, people believed certain animals were protectors of memory. Lizards especially were seen as the keepers of whispers. Some scholars believe they were associated with longevity and cunning qualities that fit tonight's muse a little too perfectly. The burrow, if that's what it is, reminds you of a place someone might rest for centuries. Not dead, just waiting for the plot to pick up again. You think about the fossil record, how it shows things that died, not what lived and simply got better at hiding. Horned lizards in particular are oddly absent from some time periods. Their bones disappear like forgotten lines from a song, but they never truly left. They just burrowed a little deeper, hit snooze on existence. This particular type of stillness isn't passive. It's performance art. It's a defiance of movement, a rejection of panic. When empires fell and languages died out, this lizard stayed tucked beneath a thin crust of sand, doing the exact opposite of drama. Odd fact for you. Certain horned lizards can regulate their internal hydration by absorbing moisture through their skin, not in some magical way, but through a capillary network between their scales. It's like their body is a sponge that knows when to sip. You'd be lucky to have that trick after half a day out here. You reach down with one finger pressed gently into the burrow's edge. It caves just slightly warm to the touch, but still. Your fingertip comes away with a fleck of something too soft to be sand. You lean in, smell it. Dry, ancient, but faintly organic. Not rot, more like the breath of something that hasn't exhaled in a long time. And then a twitch. You blink. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even fast. Just a subtle shifting of shape like the sand politely readjusted itself. You lean closer. There, half concealed beneath a veil of dirt, is a single horn tip, curved delicately like a calligrapher's stroke. Historians still debate whether this behavior, burrowing and vanishing for long stretches, is purely defensive or part of a seasonal rhythm we just haven't deciphered. Some argue it's linked to breeding cycles. Others think it's an evolutionary strategy designed to conserve energy during population dips. A few believe it's just funny, that the lizard in its quiet, sand-colored smugness enjoys pretending to be gone. You feel a grin crawl across your face. It's hard not to admire that level of commitment to the bit. The wind shifts slightly. A single beetle stumbles by oblivious to the performance. The horn doesn't move. The burrow stays shallow. But you swear the lizard is aware. Not of you specifically, of everything. Like the earth itself breathes through its scales. In the Renaissance, European scholars collecting natural oddities wrote about a desert creature that didn't move for so long it turned to stone, but would come alive if touched by moonlight. Probably just the result of travelers being very dehydrated. But still, you get it now. The lizard below you is both artifact and prankster. A creature that outlived epochs by being underwhelming on purpose. You stand slowly, knees popping. There's a warm satisfaction in knowing that beneath this stretch of dry earth, something ancient just blinked without blinking. Not dead, just incredibly unimpressed by your presence. The sun dips lower. You walk on more carefully now. Every hollow in the ground could be a guest star in tonight's show. Each step feels like a polite interruption of an age-old game you were never invited to play. You pass another shallow dip, then another. You realize the desert isn't empty. It's just sleeping with its eyes open. You crouch again, yes, again this time beside a rock so unremarkable it could win awards for mediocrity. Beige oval, slightly flattened. You wouldn't glance at it twice in a gravel parking lot. But something nags at you. A shape just slightly off a seam where there shouldn't be one, a texture too matte for stone. You reach out slowly, almost sheepish, as if asking permission from the universe to be wrong. Your hand hovers a few inches above it. And then you feel it, not heat, not movement, but presence. Like the difference between looking at a mannequin and knowing someone's inside the costume. You lean in. Close. Closer. The lizard is right there, watching you. Its eyes don't move. The lids are slits, sunken and shaded fused to form defensive blinds against sand and glare. But it's looking. Through them, at you. It knows. Its body rises and falls, imperceptibly once every 30 seconds, maybe longer. Its breathing is shallow, almost non-existent, honed by eons of practice. You're not sure when it started fooling predators. Maybe around the time humans discovered fire and decided everything else needed to be louder. Your breath, by contrast, is embarrassingly noisy. You back away a step, embarrassed to be alive near this master of quiet existence. It's like interrupting a monk mid-meditation by shouting about your Wi-Fi. This particular lizard is likely Phrynosoma platerhinos, the desert horned lizard. It evolved to live in open, dry terrain, using camouflage and stillness as primary defenses. Its broad, flat body helps dissipate heat and blend seamlessly into sandy, rocky terrain. But more than its body, it's the mindset that impresses you. This thing has been hiding in plain sight since before your ancestors figured out how to ferment grapes. Odd fact, horned lizards don't just rely on blending in. Some can actually shoot blood from their eyes. Not metaphorically. We're talking actual jets of hemolymph rich in chemicals that taste bad to predators, especially canines. Imagine you're a coyote excited about dinner when suddenly your entree starts crying blood into your face. Mood ruined. But tonight, no blood. No flares of drama. Just breath, sand, and a single pair of ancient eyes scanning your every blink. You consider speaking to it. Something short. Hey. But the moment feels too sacred for syllables. You settle into a squat again, watching as your own breathing slows to match this creature's near-death rhythm. Historians still debate whether the horned lizard's extreme stillness evolved purely as survival strategy or as something more ritualistic. There's a growing theory, mostly among the more poetic branch of ethologists, that this species practices a kind of behavioral trance, lowering heart rate and perception to mimic death as deeply as possible. Whether it's conscious or simply finely tuned instinct, nobody knows. But the effect is mesmerizing. You sit back on your heels and let the moment stretch. The sun's now painting the horizon in all the usual drama orange-violet, a bit of bruise-colored melancholy. The lizard doesn't care. Sunsets are for romantics and Instagram users. The Queen of Stillness has bigger concerns, like not blinking until you leave. Which you do? Eventually, you rise like someone backing out of a sacred chamber. You don't turn your back on the lizard. Not out of fear, but respect. Like bowing out of a room you weren't qualified to enter. As you walk, you realize the ground is full of them. Shapes you thought were rocks or chunks of baked clay now pulse with presence. They were always there. You just needed to look wrong enough to see them. In Roman military manuals, there's a reference to creatures of the East who could disappear in sunlight. Most historians believe this was metaphor or misidentification, but a few suggest those old soldiers may have encountered desert lizards with these same talents. Who's to say the Roman Empire was great at roads, but not so great at taxonomy? A few steps later, you spot another one half buried, angled like a splinter in the land. Its tail is barely visible. You reach down not to touch it, but to get close. Close enough to feel the hum again. It doesn't flinch. It doesn't blink. It lets you witness. Then you sneeze dust, dry air, dramatic timing, and the lizard's entire body shifts a fraction of an inch. Not away, down. It sinks deeper into its own footprint like a magician folding into a handkerchief. You grin embarrassed. Sorry, you whisper. It doesn't respond. It's been here too long for apologies to mean much. You keep walking a little more reverent now, like you're tiptoeing through an invisible museum. Every third rock gets a second glance. Every shadow earns your respect. And then you see it, the weirdest one yet. Half buried. Horns out, legs stiff, eyes closed. It's not moving at all. Dead. You take a cautious step forward. Then two. You hover over it like someone inspecting an unclaimed sandwich at a bus stop. Definitely a horned lizard. Definitely unmoving, and definitely not decaying. It looks hosed, like it passed out mid-drama class. You crouch. At this point, your knees are starting to unionize. This lizard is faking it. Not just playing possum leaning into it. Limbs frozen in a slightly dramatic sprawl, tail curled in that oops, I perished angle you've seen in Renaissance angel statues. You'd expect a tiny violin to start playing nearby. And then just as your hand reaches to check if it's real, it twitches. One back toe. A subtle flick, like a hiccup in the Matrix, and then stillness again. You laugh, quietly. This thing isn't dead, it's pretending. You've just witnessed the horned lizard's lesser-known but most absurd trick, the fake extinction nap. Not a defense from immediate predators. No, this is bigger. This is a long con. Entire species of horned lizards have vanished from records for decades, only to show up again like an artist re-emerging from retirement with a surprise album drop. Take Phrynosoma wigginsi, for example. Discovered in the 1930s, barely seen again for years. Many assumed it was extinct. It wasn't. Just hiding out in Baja California like a hermit with performance anxiety. Historians still debate whether these gaps are caused by habitat loss, low population density, or sheer lizard cheekiness. But the stories keep piling up. Entire field expeditions have gone home empty-handed, only for the lizards to reappear days later in the exact same terrain, lounging in full view, as if to say, "Oh, you're back." We didn't even notice. Odd fact. Some species of horned lizards can flatten themselves so thoroughly that their belly presses flush with the ground, eliminating most of their shadow. This not only helps with camouflage, but confuses infrared detection, basically ghosting both natural and technological predators. Modern Ghost Protocol Lizard Edition. You sit beside this faking lizard who is now clearly aware of you but committed to the bit. Its chest barely rises, its eye remains shut but not tight. You get the sense that if lizards could smirk, this one would be doing it now. And here's where it gets delightfully weird. Some scientists speculate that horned lizards, especially the more reclusive species, engage in what might be considered selective observation. That is, they choose when to acknowledge the outside world. Not just reacting to stimuli, but withholding reaction as a strategy. It's not impossible. Birds do it. Cuttlefish do it. And if you've ever been ghosted by someone who still watches your Instagram stories, you've experienced it too. The lizard finally blinks. Not fast, not panicked, just one slow eyelid sweep like it's closing a curtain. You swear it's saying, "I see you seeing me." You lean back on your hands, letting the warmth of the ground soak through your palms. It's solid heat, the kind that clings to stone and scales. Around you, nothing moves. Not a bug, not a branch, just the ancient lizard doing its best impression of an archaeological exhibit. You remember reading once that early explorers in the American Southwest collected horned lizards by the dozen, stuffing them into jars to bring back east. Many didn't survive the trip. The ones that did, they played dead so convincingly that even biologists assumed they were finished. One reportedly resurrected in a museum storage room 6 months later, terrifying a janitor who understandably needed the rest of the day off. You lie down beside the lizard now. Why not? May as well try to see the world from a lower perspective. The sky looks enormous from here. The desert stretches forever in all directions, a slow ocean of heat and time. If anything moved, you'd see it. But nothing does, because everything here is choosing not to. The lizard finally moves, a slow stretch of the back leg, a tail twitch, not fleeing, not even shifting position. Just reminding the world I could leave. I just don't feel like it. You get up slowly, let it win. You weren't going to outpatience the horned lizard. Nobody does. That's why they're still here. They don't need to run. They just need to wait until the threat gets bored and walks away. You, as it turns out, are the threat. And you're walking away. You walk with a new kind of caution now, like the ground itself is eavesdropping. The lizards have trained you well. Your eyes scan for subtle shapes and unusually lumpy rock, a tail masquerading as a twig, a pair of horns pretending to be cactus shadow. And then you find it. Not a lizard this time, but its echo. Half fossil, half mirage, wedged between two crumbling stones. A sun-baked shape, bleached and brittle, with just enough definition to make your stomach lurch. A tiny skull, short horns, perfectly preserved spine curving into a fan of fine desert-whittled ribs. You crouch without thinking. It's old. Probably not ancient in the museum sense, but certainly not recent. A body abandoned mid-disguise. And here's the strange part, it ends. Literally. The fossilized tail just stops. No sign of decay, no predator's marks. It simply vanishes into nothing. Like someone paused the recording halfway through. You blink. Look again. Still nothing. The rest of the fossil trail is missing. No tracks, no scat, not even the usual littering of beetle husk and wind-blown debris. It's as if the lizard got halfway through being remembered and changed its mind. Tails carved in camouflage. Historians still debate whether partial fossils like this represent incomplete preservation or incomplete presence. One theory, wild but fun, suggests some lizards evolved camouflage so advanced it carried over even in death. Their remains, blending so well into sediment, literally go unnoticed during digs. There's even a field nickname for it, the vanishing layer. Sediment strata where expected fossils consistently underperform. Archaeologists expect 30 samples. They find 2. Or 1.5 like this. You brush sand from the little skull, your fingers gentle. A gust of wind immediately tries to rebury it. Nature's version of nothing to see here. Odd fact. Some horned lizards have microscopic ridges on their scales that trap dust, not just for camouflage, but to manipulate how light bounces off their skin. They literally sculpt how shadows hit them. That's not biology, that's stagecraft. You sit back and stare at the horizon. The desert feels like a prank now. an elaborate art installation where everything is almost real. You remember the story of a 19th century prospector who claimed he saw an entire herd of horned lizards rise from the sand and scatter like wind-blown leaves. Nobody believed him. He eventually stopped telling the story. But you wonder, because right now you can feel it. The land is watching you, judging your every blink. You shuffle forward, 10 steps, then stop. There another fossil, just the impression of one this time. Like a lizard had pressed itself into the sand and then floated upward. You trace the outline with your hand. It's flawless, perfect shoulder arch, rib spacing, tail drag mark. But again, no starting point, no ending. A ghost print. This one's fresh, hours old at most, which means the lizard isn't gone, just done being seen. You glance behind you. Your own footprints are obvious, ugly, clumsy. The desert holds your presence like a grudge. The horned lizard, though, leaves behind suggestions, rumors, footnotes in the sand. You think of those early explorers again, sunburned, dehydrated, certain they were alone, walking past dozens of these creatures without knowing. Some lizards probably walked right behind them just to mess around. One historian argued this behavior was desert mischief, a kind of passive trolling by nature itself. You wouldn't be surprised. You kneel and whisper, "You win." And somewhere out of sight, a tiny tongue flicks in smug agreement. Eventually, you stop walking. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because you feel watched again. Not by one lizard, but by all of them. Every horned trickster within 100 yards has probably clocked you. Some are playing rock, some are playing ghost. One somewhere is probably playing director. You find a flat shaded spot beneath a crooked rock overhang and sit. Let's take stock, shall we? This thing you've been following, the horned lizard, it's not just a one-hit wonder in the reptile world. It's a franchise. Over 20 recognized species in the Phrynosoma genus spread across North America like a very spiky, very well-camouflaged secret, and each one has its own evolutionary party trick. The classic model comes with a body like a tortilla, someone dropped in gravel short-wide and totally uninterested in moving fast. Then come the accessories. Horns, real ones made of bone extensions from the skull, not for fighting. Not really. They're more like warning labels that say, "Not worth the calories." Then there are the spikes along the sides above the eyes, even under the chin. Not poisonous, not razor sharp, just annoying enough that a predator might say, "Hey, I'll eat something less pokey." But the crown jewel in this evolutionary resume, the blood thing, you haven't seen it yet and hopefully you won't. It's not a casual feature. It's last resort stuff. When cornered, some horned lizards can rupture the tiny blood vessels around their eyes and shoot streams of blood up to 5 feet. The chemical mix is repulsive to many predators, especially canines like coyotes and foxes. Odd fact that blood doesn't hurt the lizard at all. They lose a bit of pressure, sure, but recover quickly. It's basically a squirt gun filled with horror, which would be fine if they only used it on predators, but some species have been observed aiming it at humans. Researchers, campers, once allegedly a Boy Scout troop leader who got too close. He quit scouting the next day. You lie back against the warm rock staring up at the sky. Somewhere above, vultures circle again. Not for you, not yet. But they've got excellent noses. They'd know if something had gone wrong. You wonder how many horned lizards they've been fooled by little desert actors playing dead so convincingly that even death looked confused. Historians still debate the origin of this bizarre adaptation. Did the blood thing evolve purely as a deterrent, or was it originally some internal regulation mechanism that got hijacked by evolution for defense? Some argue it's a mix of both. What started as a pressure release valve became a survival edge. You glance to your right and almost drop your canteen. There's one watching you. Again. Of course. It's perched on a flat stone, front legs tucked in, eyes blinking at the exact pace of boredom. This one's bigger, older maybe. The horns are longer, curved slightly like a miniature crown. You raise your hand in a slow greeting. It doesn't move. You speak softly. I know what you can do. Still nothing. You grin. I won't ask for a demonstration. You half expect it to wink. It doesn't, but you get the feeling that if it had eyebrows, one would have lifted. These lizards, these phrynosoma, aren't just survivors. They're patient, tactical. They outlast rather than outfight. While other species sprint, swarm, or scream, these little tanks simply wait you out. You remember reading about a 1920s cattle rancher who once mistook a horned lizard for a piece of pottery. Picked it up, turned it over, then dropped it with a scream when it blinked. His wife made him sleep outside for 3 nights until the curse wore off. Not the lizard's fault, just a good performance. You sit in silence now, eyes locked with the spiky monarch in front of you. You stay still. Not perfectly, but still enough. A few minutes pass, then more. Your leg cramps. You ignore it. And then it moves. Slowly, deliberately, the lizard lowers its body to the stone and shifts half an inch toward the shadow. That's it. No scurry, no dash. Just a repositioning like a chess piece deciding the game isn't quite over. You feel weirdly honored, like it just acknowledged your existence in its own slow, sand-dusted way. Maybe that's the final trick, not the horns, not the blood, not even the camouflage. Maybe the real superpower is knowing how to move so little that when you do it matters. You close your eyes and breathe with the land. You're learning the rhythm now. Stillness. Wait. Stillness again. The horned lizard disappears into shadow. You don't see it leave. You just open your eyes and it's not there. You stay seated longer than you mean to, half hoping it'll return, half worried it never existed. The heat has started playing tricks on your senses. The rocks shimmer like old VHS static, and you swear the wind is repeating things it said an hour ago. You get back to your feet quietly. You're starting to understand that silence is the price of admission here. Take one loud breath and the show vanishes. The terrain shifts subtly as you walk. The rocks get redder, the sand softer, more like sifted flour. You notice something else, too, a pattern of absence. No footprints, no scat, no bones, no bugs. It's like nature took an eraser to this whole section of desert, clean as a showroom floor. And it hits you, this is one of those places the spots paleontologists complain about in dry tones over dusty maps. The gaps. The missing fossil zones. There are layers of earth where things should be. Sediment says yes. Climate says yes, and yet, nothing. These aren't places that lacked life. They're places where life declined to RSVP, or more likely didn't want to be found. You find another half-fossil tail only. Etched into sandstone, interrupted halfway by a clean break. Not snapped, just fading. The rest of the lizard either vanished mid-sprint or chose not to leave an ending. Like a story that ends on a comma. Historians still debate whether some ancient horned lizards faked extinction on a scale so large it fooled science. It sounds ridiculous until you realize how many species have disappeared from records only to show up again later smug and unbothered. Take Phrynosoma or biculare. The Mexican plateau horned lizard. Declared endangered for years, barely seen in some regions, then suddenly reappearing in numbers that suggest it was never gone. Just done cooperating with surveys. Some researchers now talk about the myth of extinction. Not for all animals, obviously plenty really are gone, but some, they argue, go dark because they can. Because playing extinct gives them a survival advantage. You try to imagine the mindset of a creature so in tune with vanishing that even death can't confidently claim it. Odd fact. There's a species of toad that can hibernate underground for up to 8 years during drought, emerging only when rain returns. That's impressive. But it's not performance, it's emergency survival. Horned lizards, by contrast, seem to flirt with invisibility recreationally. You crest a low hill, stop. Below you is a dry basin maybe 50 feet across. The sand there is smoother, untouched. And right in the center, oh come on, a perfect fossil. Not half, not fragmented. A full lizard impression. Spine skull, tiny feet, even the curve of its underbelly. It's so clear you think it must be fake. Maybe someone carved it there. A joke for future hikers. But you know better. You descend slow as fog. Your boots barely whisper. You drop to your knees beside it and stare. The fossil is flawless. Too flawless. You blink, and you swear the eye just twitched. But the fossil doesn't move. It doesn't breathe. It doesn't even flinch when your shadow passes over it. Still, you don't touch it. You just whisper, okay, I get it. Because whether that's a real fossil or the best living statue you've ever seen, the point is the same. You're not in charge here, you're the guest. And the lizard? Well, she's been playing this game for millions of years. And she's still winning. You sit on your heels for a while watching the fossil that might be. Then something shifts, not the lizard, not you, but the world around you. The wind picks up. But this isn't your average lazy desert breeze. This wind has teeth. It tears sideways through the basin, tossing grit into your eyes, into your ears, into your soul. Visibility drops instantly. You throw your arm up in reflex. A mouthful of sand crunches between your teeth. And the lizard is gone. Of course it is. In the span of that first wind burst, it vanished. Fossil trick reality, whatever it was. The ground is now perfectly smooth, like someone sandblasted it from memory. You laugh. Just once. Loud. The wind slaps it out of the air. The horned lizard's signature move, you realize, isn't just stillness, it's sand theater. The desert doesn't just hide them. It performs with them. You remember something. You read horned lizards have the ability to inflate their bodies, raising their torsos ever so slightly and allowing them to ride the sand like a ship, catching just enough wind to vanish into the sea. That sounds like myth? It isn't. Some desert tribes even believe the lizards could summon storms, not because they controlled weather, but because they always disappeared right before one started. Historians still debate whether the so-called sand flops, those exaggerated jerky death spasms seen in some lizard encounters, are panic reactions or practiced routines. Some say it's pure instinct. Others argue it's a learned behavior honed through generations of reptilian absurdity. Odd fact. One researcher in the 1970s witnessed a horned lizard throw itself dramatically onto its back, remain motionless during a dog encounter, then suddenly roll upright and burrow into the ground as soon as the dog lost interest. When the researcher tried to replicate the scenario, the lizard refused to perform. Repeatedly. Until he gave up and left. Possibly the most stubborn actor to ever grace a desert stage. You shuffle to your feet, squinting through the rising dust. You catch a flicker of movement to the right. Sand peeling sideways. A brief tail. Then nothing. Then, you step that way carefully. The wind keeps shifting, now a low growl in your ears. The ground dips again, another shallow basin, and here it is, a performance. One lizard, half visible, rolling in the sand like it's auditioning for an indie film. It flops to one side, lets its legs go limp, then stretches dramatically like a fainting aristocrat. It freezes. A beetle wanders by unbothered. The lizard twitches its tail twice, then plays dead again. You lean against a rock, caught somewhere between awe and disbelief. This is slapstick survival. Evolutionary vaudeville. The sand around the lizard stirs unnaturally, deliberately. You watch as it buries itself in real time, its legs digging shallow motions that look like they shouldn't work, but they do. The sand folds over it like a curtain, and in under 10 seconds, gone. Completely gone. No trace, no mound, no puff of exhale, like the land closed up and forgot it ever opened. You whisper, "That wasn't for me, was it?" Because you're starting to think these acts aren't even about humans or predators. They're about themselves. The lizards aren't hiding in fear, they're staging vanishing acts for an audience that may or may not be watching. You sit again, letting the wind howl past. This entire desert feels like a dream you only remember the outline of. You know you saw something, you just can't prove it. And that seems to be the point. A memory surfaces, a group of 8th century monks in North Africa believed the desert was home to holy animals, beings that represented perfect silence and discipline. They carved horn shapes into rock walls, attributing wisdom to creatures that lived by stillness and disappearance. Most dismissed it as allegory, but maybe not. Maybe they watch the same shows you're seeing now. You glance down. Another lizard. This one's not pretending. It's curled under a thin veil of sand, eyes open. It sees you. It just doesn't care. You're part of the scenery now. You give a small bow. It does not return it. Fair. You think about your own instincts. Panic, motion, constant verification of existence. Look at me, validate me, watch me spin. The horned lizard rejects all of it. Instead, it offers performance with no applause, drama with no climax. It disappears for the sake of disappearing. A gust flings a wall of grit across your line of sight. When it passes, the lizard is gone. You don't even look for it this time. The wind fades like a curtain dropping at the end of a play. You sit there for a few minutes, blinking out sand lips, dry skin crusted with the kind of dust that feels older than language. Everything's quiet now, too quiet almost. You feel like the audience at a show where the star disappears mid-scene and never comes back for the encore. And then you hear it. Not a rustle, not a growl, a plop. You look up. Nothing. Then plop. You spin around. There 5 feet to your left, half sunk in the sand, is a horned lizard. But this one's different. It's wet. You stare. That doesn't make sense. There hasn't been rain for weeks, and yet here it is, a lizard freshly landed like a drop of water fell out of the sky and grew horns on impact. You take a step toward it and it moves fast this time, scattering sand behind it as it disappears into the dry brush with all the urgency of someone caught skipping rehearsal. That wasn't normal. And sure enough, before your brain can rationalize it away, plop! Another 10 feet away, also wet. What is happening? You crouch near the new arrival who is already trying to burrow into the nearest clump of dust. This one's small, younger, with softer horns and wider eyes. It looks around in a way that's almost apologetic, like it didn't mean to drop in unexpectedly. And that's when it hits you. You've wandered into a local legend. One you heard once in a roadside diner somewhere between Sonora and Truth. Horned lizards fall from the sky. Not metaphorically, literally. Desert people whisper about it. Farmers in New Mexico, ranchers in West Texas. Navajo grandmothers who keep a bowl of dust by the door in case one lands indoors. Stories about rainstorms that drop lizards like a biblical prank. Historians still debate whether these stories are rooted in meteorological anomaly, mass hallucination, or just very committed folklore. The scientific explanation, if you ask a biologist who still believes in joy, goes something like this. Heavy winds during mating season occasionally lift small reptiles into dust devils or freak updrafts, depositing them miles away. But here's the thing. There was no storm. There is no storm. You look up. Sky clear blue, judgmental. No clouds, no thunder. Just one sun, glaring down like a teacher catching you in a lie. Plop. You don't even look this time. You just whisper, okay, because why not? Why shouldn't it rain lizards on a Tuesday afternoon in a place where even fossils refuse to commit? Odd fact. In 1949, a group of schoolchildren in Louisiana claimed to have seen frogs fall from the sky during a light drizzle. Scientists chalked it up to a passing waterspout, but no weather data backed it up. One kid swore the frogs looked startled, as if they hadn't been expecting the flight either. You scan the area, there are now 4 horned lizards within your line of sight. 1 burrowing, 1 watching. 2 just chilling like they landed right on target. You don't feel scared, you feel outnumbered, and maybe a little honored. You sit down again cross-legged this time, in the middle of their not-so-ceremonial landing pad. None of them run. One even blinks at you, slowly. It's the closest thing to a wave you've seen all day. You wonder if this is how the legend started. A single person, dusty and sun-dazed, witnessing the impossible and having nobody believe them, returning to town with wild eyes and a wild story only to be met with raised eyebrows and the slow backing away of neighbors. You won't tell anyone. Not because they wouldn't believe you, but because you don't want to share it. This belongs to the desert now, to the lizards, to you. You lie back in the sand. It's warm, textured like old secrets. The lizards keep their distance, but you feel them nearby. Shifting, breathing. Some of them might even be smiling in their own scaly way. Maybe this is their idea of a prank. Not hiding, not fleeing, just arriving unexpectedly like uninvited guests at a polite apocalypse. You watch the sky for a long time. No more plops. Just stillness again. The show's over. Or maybe the intermission. Either way, the desert has the final laugh. You don't know how long you lie there half buried in warm sand limbs, loose thoughts drifting like tumbleweeds. It's hard to measure time in a place that doesn't seem to acknowledge clocks. Maybe the sun moved. Maybe it didn't. You blink once and realize all the horned lizards are gone again. Of course they are. You smile at the sky. You're all so dramatic. But there's no answer. Just heat humming in your ears and a landscape that looks too innocent to be hiding so many smug little performers. Eventually you stand, shake the sand out of your hair. Your legs feel strange, partly numb, partly alive in a new way, like the earth pressed some secret rhythm into your skin while you rested. You walk slowly now. Not because you're tired, but because rushing through this place would feel like interrupting a slow dance. Every footstep feels like a question. Every patch of ground might be a stage. And then you see it a skeleton. Real this time. Bleached. Still. Definite. It's old. Decades, maybe. A horned lizard dead and done. No mystery here, no clever tricks, no theatrical flops, no slow blinks or dramatic burials. Just bone. A crisp outline of something that used to pretend. You kneel beside it. It's strange how final it feels. Like watching a magician's last performance, curtain down, applause forgotten. You touch the skull, carefully. It's lighter than you expect, fragile like a dry leaf. One horn is chipped. The eye socket holds the memory of things once seen and ignored. It's oddly peaceful. And that's when it hits you, not all horned lizards vanish. Some really do go. Some decide they're done pretending. The idea chills you more than it should. There's a kind of heartbreak in that knowing that not every act ends in applause. That sometimes the lizard simply stops. And yet, odd fact, horned lizards have one of the lowest resting metabolic rates of any North American reptile. They can survive on practically nothing. Some individuals have been known to sit in the same 2-meter territory for months, never needing more than a few ants a day. It's not laziness, it's efficiency. They don't do more than they must. They live like minimalist philosophers. You sit next to the skeleton and let your mind wander. How many of these creatures have faked extinction so well they were never recorded? How many are still out there watching from beneath thin veils of dust, amused by our search for them? Historians still debate whether there was ever a coordinated species-wide disappearance. In the late 1800s, sightings of horned lizards in certain regions of the Southwest dropped suddenly and dramatically. Newspapers speculated about disease, environmental change, overcollection for the pet trade, but within a generation, the sightings returned alongside rumors that the lizards had simply gone quiet. Some folks believe they watched us watching them and got bored. You stand again, brushing yourself off. You whisper a quiet goodbye to the bones. It feels right. Then you keep walking. The desert rolls on lazy and golden. The wind teases your ears. You catch the flicker of movement near a cluster of rocks. Your heart jumps, but it's just a beetle, clumsy and honest in its intent. You think about all the things that vanish without fanfare. Not extinct, just taking a break. In your world, things are always ending. Shows get canceled, trends die, species go extinct. But here, in this slow lizard-ruled theater, things just pause. Sometimes for a decade, sometimes for a millennium. There's a difference. You crest a small hill, and in the distance, a dust devil spins lazily across the flat plain. You watch it twist, change, lose shape, reform again. You wonder briefly if a lizard's riding inside it. Laughing. Probably. Because the trick isn't the disappearance. The trick is making you question whether it ever happened. You descend the ridge slowly, one careful footstep at a time, the ground a little too quiet beneath you. There's a shift in the air now, like a breath held too long. You're no longer just observing this world. You've been absorbed into it. The desert has closed behind you like a zipper. And then it happens. You nearly step on one. A horned lizard tucked under a thin crust of dirt only a few inches from your boot. You freeze mid-stride, one foot hovering awkwardly in the air like you're doing desert ballet. For a full second, your brain refuses to believe it. Then it blinks. Just once. Slow. Deliberate. You flinch backward as if it had shouted, but it doesn't move. Doesn't even twitch. It stares up at you like a bouncer deciding whether you're on the list. This close, it's hard to ignore the detail. The horns curve gently above the brow like ornamental daggers. Its skin is all dust and matte earth tones, each scale flecked with a layer of desert memory. There's something ancient about the way it lies there, like a Roman coin in the middle of a gas station parking lot. You crouch slowly, trying not to shake the ground too much. The lizard's eyes don't follow you. They just know you're there. It gives the same vibe as an elderly librarian who's already written you off as someone who talks too loud. Odd fact. Horned lizards don't have conventional eyelids. Instead, they have modified scales that function like semi-permanent blinds. It's part armor, part insulation, and 100% condescension. When they blink, it's a decision, not a reflex. You stay still. A test. You blink first. It wins? Historians still debate the symbolic role of horned lizards in pre-Columbian societies. Some records suggest they were associated with survival and patience, guardians of time itself. Others claim they were simply culinary afterthoughts, slow, small, and not worth the effort. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, like most things involving sacred reptiles and hungry humans. You whisper, "Sorry about that." The lizard continues to do its best rock impression, but you catch at the faintest flare of its nostrils. A single subtle breath. It's alive and it knows you know it's alive, and now you're stuck in a silent social contract that neither of you signed. You scoot backward away from the lizard's personal space bubble. It doesn't break character, but you feel its judgment. You look down and something clicks. Your own boot print just behind you looks deep. Too deep. The heel's edge slashed through a thin ripple in the sand and destroyed something. You didn't step on a lizard, but you almost did. A close call, yes, but it leaves you rattled. These creatures are everywhere. Every lump, every fold of earth could be a heartbeat in disguise. You start replaying every step you've taken since you arrived here, every crunch, every shuffle. How many of them watched you pass? How many let you? You start walking again, slower than ever, scanning the ground with the focus of someone diffusing a landmine with a spoon. And just as you're adjusting to this new level of paranoia, it happens again. A lizard blinks. Another one. Just ahead, almost under a patch of dead grass. You freeze. This one's even better at pretending. If it weren't for that blink, you'd have walked past it like a lazy tourist in an art gallery of miracles. Its camouflage is incredible. Sand and flesh, shadow, and skin, the perfect convergence of presence and denial. It doesn't just look like the ground, it feels like it belongs to it. And then the tiniest twitch, a toe curl, a dust flick, gone. You didn't even see it move. It just pixel glitched out of your awareness. One moment, lizard. Next moment, nothing but loose dirt. You start laughing. Genuinely. Not loud, but the kind that comes from recognizing something too perfect to explain. You're not tracking wildlife anymore. You're watching the world's most committed live-action role-playing club. You pause under a short, shriveled creosote bush and take a swig from your canteen. The water tastes warm and metallic like the desert borrowed it first. As you drink, you catch your reflection in the curve of the bottle. Sand-crusted, sweat-slicked eyes wide. You're starting to resemble them, not in the spiky, blood-shooting sense, but in how still you've become. in how carefully you move, in how you've stopped trying to see them and started letting them decide when you're worth being seen. You glance down at your feet. Nothing. But you don't trust it anymore. You never will again. You set off again, slow as erosion, trying to follow something you now realize has no interest in being followed. The trail of the horned lizard isn't like that of other animals. No predictable paw prints, no broken branches or bent grasses. Just suggestions, whispers in sand. At first, you try to find tracks. You spot a line in the dirt, wavy, faint, like someone dragged a finger through sugar. You follow it with hope. It curves, doubles back, stops. You find yourself staring at your own boot print. You sigh. You've just walked in a circle. Twice. You spin around to retrace your steps and pause. There to the right, another faint track. Tiny clawed feet dragging slightly tail, barely scraping the surface. It zigzags forward, cuts left, then disappears. Of course it does. That's the thing about tracking horned lizards. They are untrackable, at least in any conventional sense. Their feet are adapted not just for digging and gripping, but for confusing you personally. Some species walk with a stutter step, short forward bursts interrupted by moments of complete stillness, throwing off both predators and overconfident hikers. Odd fact, horned lizards often walk in erratic patterns not because they're lost, but because you are. This wandering is strategic, designed to baffle those who might follow. And it works. You're baffled. Officially. You sit on a chunk of stone shaped like a broken idea. The desert breathes around you. You glance down again. Another track? It leads into a patch of rocks. You follow. It splits, then doubles back. Then you spot something new. Two sets of tracks, one clearly, fresher, slightly deeper, more deliberate. You chase them like a game. After a few minutes, you're crouched on all fours, squinting at patterns in the dust, like a sleep-deprived detective. And then as you round a small rise, a group of lizards, not one, not two, 6, all horned, all scattered within a 10-foot circle, each in a different pose. One flattened against a rock body, shadowless. One perched like royalty on a small mound. One belly down in sand, only the top of its spiny back visible. You stop breathing. It's like walking into a room where everyone had just been talking about you and went quiet. They don't move. They don't acknowledge each other. They don't acknowledge you. They just are. You stay completely still, afraid even a twitch might cause this miraculous lizard congregation to implode into sand again. Your eyes scan them, each one different. Horn variation, size, even posture. You realize this isn't a herd. It's not even a gathering. This is a meeting, or a performance, or maybe just a coincidence so perfect it deserves reverence. You whisper, "Hello." Nothing happens. Then one turns its head, slightly, just a tilt. Not toward you, just away from its previous angle, like adjusting the view for a better sunset. Another one flicks its tail once just to let the wind know who's in charge. You don't move. You barely breathe. You feel like the audience at a silent play that was written for an audience of none. Historians still debate whether horned lizards ever lived communally. Fossil evidence suggests they were solitary territorial creatures. But more than one naturalist has reported sightings like this, clusters of horned lizards, all occupying the same patch of terrain, apparently ignoring each other. Some think it's related to temperature regulation. Others believe it's breeding behavior. And then there are people like you sitting in the dust watching what looks suspiciously like an improv group of ancient reptiles working out emotional scenes in total silence. You blink. All 6 lizards are now facing different directions. You didn't see them move. You start to stand slowly, respectfully, but you hesitate. Something inside you tells you not to break the circle just yet. Instead, you sit back down. The lizards remain frozen. Then one gets up, literally just stands. All 4 legs under it. It doesn't run. It doesn't hide. It walks. Slowly, casually, straight past you. The others don't react. You watch it go. It disappears behind a rock. Gone. No flourish. No fanfare. The rest remains still. You sit for another 10 minutes. One more leaves. Then two more silently vanishing into different directions. Eventually, only one remains. A juvenile, maybe. It stares at you with wide eyes that don't blink. You stare back. Eventually, you realize this one has been tracking you. Your prints, your pauses, your decisions. Maybe it's been following you in its own way, looping behind beside ahead. Learning what you'll do next, and now it's just making sure you know. You nod at it slowly. It doesn't nod back. But it doesn't leave either. Not yet. The last lizard lingers in your sightline like a punctuation mark. You're not quite sure how to read. Maybe a period, maybe a semicolon. Definitely not an exclamation point. It sits there small and still. One eye on you, the other probably thinking about lunch. You sit across from it like two poker players who forgot the rules but still feel obligated to bluff. The wind has settled. Not died, just paused. The light's gone golden now, dust swirling lazily through the low sunbeams like smoke from an old campfire story. You shift slightly on the rock and feel that feeling again. Like something ancient is watching through the eyes of something very small. You realize this lizard is not young. It just looks that way. The body is compact, sure, but the horns are long worn. The texture of the skin tells its own story, scales dulled, not by age but by time. There's a difference. This isn't a juvenile. This is a survivor. You found the last lizard of nowhere. It doesn't do anything at first. Just sits there, breathing so slowly you'd need lab equipment to measure it. No twitch, no blink, no shift of weight. And then it does something subtle but seismic. It takes a step forward, one small step. Dust rises like the desert exhaling approval. The lizard pauses, looks at you. Another step. It's not charging, not curious, just moving like it has decided you're ready. And when it reaches your boot, it does the unthinkable. It climbs on. You freeze, every muscle locking in place like a statue that just got nervous. You feel the tiny weight of it, less than a paperback book, but somehow heavier than history. Its claws grip your laces, its belly warm and dry. It pauses at the top of your foot and looks up. You have no idea what to do, so you do nothing. It stands there for what feels like hours but is probably under a minute. A desert minute. Measured in sun angle and held breath. You look down, and in that moment you understand something. Not in words, not even in thoughts. In sensation. The lizard has chosen to acknowledge you not as a threat, not as an observer, but as witness. It's like being knighted by the smallest, weirdest monarch in the world. A ceremony performed in total silence, attended by no one, yet somehow official. Odd fact. Some Native American cultures considered the horned lizard a symbol of protection and survival. A being that lived at the boundary between seen and unseen, believed and ignored. Warriors carried carvings of them into battle, not for aggression but for patience, for endurance. This little elder rests on your foot as if to say you're not a predator but you're still too loud. You nod slowly, and as if on cue, the lizard steps down, climbs off, and continues walking. Not into a bush, not under a rock, just onward, across open sand. No fear, no rush, just pure, undiluted commitment to being unfindable again. You don't follow. You wouldn't dare. You sit there for a long time after it's gone, watching the tracks slowly get rearranged by the wind. You try to memorize them, but they're already different. Lighter, looser, starting to vanish. That's the trick, you realize. These creatures don't just hide. They erase, not just themselves, but the evidence, the moment, the witness. You stand up slowly and look around. Nothing. No rustle, no motion, no audience. Only dust and time, and the vague hum of a world that remembers better than it speaks. Historians still debate whether horned lizards possess true intelligence beyond instinct, whether they act out of strategy or pure reaction. But after today, you're not sure those categories even matter. What you saw was intention. Maybe not human, maybe better. You start walking back. You don't try to track the lizard. You don't retrace your steps. You don't want to. It's not about the path anymore. It's about the pause. The moment when everything was still and one ancient being decided you were worthy of a single step. You feel it even now on your foot, in your breath. And somewhere behind you, buried in a whisper of sand, something ancient smiles. You walk for a while, quietly, slowly, not because you're tired, but because something inside you has shifted. You're no longer moving through the desert. The desert is moving through you. There are no more lizards in sight, but their presence clings to everything. The rocks look like they're waiting for cues. The bushes hum with held breath. Even your shadow walks lighter now, trying not to offend the sand. You crest a low rise and stop. The land dips into a bowl, wide and shallow, rimmed by redstone teeth. The floor of the basin is a mirror of everything you've walked, dry, cracked, dotted with boulders, whispering with wind. But it feels different. Like you've arrived somewhere. Like this is where the story circles back to its start. You step down into it. Immediately you feel it. Not fear, not reverence. Permission. You're allowed here. The ground crunches underfoot, but softly now, as if even your boots have learned to behave. You walk without looking for anything. You've finally figured it out. When you look for horned lizards, they disappear. When you let them come to you, they write themselves into your day like a clever footnote. You reach the center of the basin and sit. No rock, no shelter, just earth. And you wait. Minutes pass, then more. The sun starts its descent, the light thickens, and then you feel it, breathing, not yours, beside you. You don't turn. You don't need to. A presence settles next to you, as quiet as a falling sigh. It's not dramatic. It doesn't break the stillness, it completes it. You glance down, barely moving your head. There it is, a horned lizard. Full grown, still, right at your side. You stare, it doesn't. It knows you're looking. You don't reach out. That would be breaking the rules. Instead, you close your eyes, and you match it. Breath for breath. Stillness for stillness. You stop thinking. You stop naming. You stop planning how you'll tell this story because you won't. You can't. This isn't a story to be retold. It's a moment to be held. The wind kisses your cheek, warm and full of dust. Somewhere far away, a hawk cries, but here there is no sound, only presence. Odd fact. The word camouflage comes from the French camoufler, meaning to disguise. But its deeper roots tie into ideas of mischief, even deception. That's what you're realizing now. Horned lizards aren't hiding. They're disguising reality, repainting it. They're not absent. They're edited in later. Historians still debate how much early desert cultures understood about these creatures. The oldest petroglyphs in the region show small horned animals drawn next to humans, not as prey, but as symbols. Some believe they were messengers. Others think they were guardians. You start to believe they were teachers, because this isn't about lizards anymore. It's about stillness, patience, refusal to rush toward noise. You open your eyes. The lizard is still there. It blinks, slowly. You blink back. And that's the conversation. No morale, no climax, no dramatic finale. Just breath. Just dust. Just a creature beside you being what it is. And you for once being nothing more than present. Eventually it walks away. Doesn't rush. Doesn't vanish. Just steps into the shadow of a nearby stone and becomes it. You don't move. You let it go. And as the last light slides across the basin, you know you've seen something real. Maybe sacred. Definitely old. You lie back on the earth and let it hold you. You don't sleep. You don't speak. You simply breathe, and somewhere nearby, something ancient breathes with you. The sky fades from burnt gold to ash blue. As you lie there listening to the hush between stars, you don't move. You don't need to. Everything important has already happened. The warmth of the day begins to retreat, but the sand beneath you still holds onto it like a memory, refusing to let go. Your breathing has slowed to match the rhythm of the land itself. For the first time in your life, you feel unedited. The horned lizard is gone, but you feel its absence like a thumbprint on your skin. It didn't flee. It simply left, like a line at the end of a poem that doesn't need punctuation. You finally sit up, brushing sand off your arms gently like you're afraid to disturb the moment. The desert is impossibly still now, that rare kind of quiet where even your heartbeat feels like it's echoing. There's no need to find another lizard. There's no need to confirm the story. You are the story now. You realize the horned lizard's secret isn't just camouflage or blood tricks or stage collapses. It's patience, a lifetime of it, maybe more. The ability to wait while the world spins itself into exhaustion. The power to remain when everything else is burned out, chased trends, lost control. That's why they're still here. Not in great numbers, not loudly, but still. Waiting under rock shadows and beneath old roots, laughing softly when scientists declare them missing. Smiling even slower when we celebrate finding them again. Historians still debate whether the horned lizard represents extinction deferred or extinction disguised, but you know better now. It's neither. The horned lizard is a choice, to vanish on purpose, to be misunderstood as strategy, to confuse being unseen with being gone. And so here at the edge of light and story, you sit with that truth. Odd fact to leave you with. The horned lizard's blood contains molecules that bind to predator saliva and cause irritation, basically turning taste itself into a weapon. They've weaponized being gross. Respect. You look out over the fading land. The stones are turning gray now, the color of half-remembered dreams. One by one, stars blink into view. Somewhere far off, a coyote barks once as if to check if anyone's listening. You stay quiet. The temperature falls. The earth exhales. You hear the faintest scratch just once behind you. You don't turn. You let it be what it is, a reminder. A final curtain rustle before the actor vanishes. And when you finally rise, your footprints are barely there. The sand has already begun to erase you. You walk away slowly, and behind you the desert returns to silence, to secrets, to stillness. It always does. Tonight you walked through a theater of dust and silence where nothing moved unless it chose to. In a land where bones vanish and fossils tease, you met a creature that has mastered the art of misdirection, not with speed or strength, but with stillness. The horned lizard, ancient and odd, lives by pretending. Pretending to be dead. Pretending to be stone. Pretending even to be extinct. You followed half-trails, watched lizards stage vanishing acts, and witnessed performances so precise they could shame any stage magician. You nearly stepped on one twice. You saw them drop from the sky like punchlines. You learned they can spit blood from their eyes, manipulate shadows, and burrow through time like ghosts rehearsing their exits. But beyond the tricks, you learned something else. You saw what patience looks like when it grows scales. You saw that survival isn't about strength or visibility, it's about presence. The horned lizard waits until the world forgets it, then breathes again. And maybe by the end you did too. Because what began as a quest to spot something rare became a lesson in disappearing, in becoming small, slow, and unhurried. In witnessing without interrupting. You walked through the shadows of the ages, and the lizard let you stay.